Good Monday morning, everybody. And it is a crazy day. Lots of stuff going on the weekend. Hope that you had a nice one, a safe one. And, we're going to see some more wonderful Dion. It's going to be all Dion all the time after what happened this weekend. Morning, Buckshot. What do we got here? The guy who created Fox 40 Whistle, his son, David Foxcroft, will be joining the big as a referee, just as he lost CFL last year. That's very cool. Yeah, that is a very cool situation. I know that it started off Thursday night with the Gators getting beat by a very good Utah team, and Chris Fowler was on the call of that game. Then he flew by private jet to New York, where he held down the spot of play-by-play host for the U.S. Open. Got back on the plane, flew back to this time to Orlando, and called the LSU game against Florida State, which of course Florida State won. So it's been a busy week for Chris on his situation. The best stuff of the week. Well, you gotta say the best game of the week was that wonderful matchup between Colorado and TCU, and Coach Prime getting a win and being Coach Prime. I mean, you got to do what you do best, right? Well, Bear Bryant once said, "Ain't bragging if you can do it," and so far, one game gives him that starts the legend. Let's see how long the legend stays, but Dion's usually whatever he does it well, and he does it right. So we will see how that works out. Good weekend for the Pack. I don't think a Pack team didn't lose this week. So that was pretty amazing. And then, of course, Duke getting upset last night on ESPN. And then we had the opening weekend for NBC Peacock. Peacock set a streaming record for their telecast of East Carolina and Michigan. And then the nightcap was, of course, West Virginia at Penn State, which hit a pretty good number. And it was the highest rated show from a college football standpoint in primetime since 2015. And, it also was the highest rated show since 2004 when they had two ranked teams playing in in postseason. I'm sorry, primetime. So yeah, it was a good television weekend for ESPN. It was a good television weekend for NBC, and certainly CBS didn't do badly with getting back to doing Big Ten. Now, some people will forget that CBS, in their contract with the Big East, also had some Big Ten games. So CBS back in the 80s and early 90s did that. So that's how the situation works, right? So what do we got here? Hey, Terrence, how are you? Charter's in dispute with Disney. Has threatened to exit the video business. It appears Charter is serious and has the most leverage. What does Disney do? Well, here's the thing, Terrence. When you are a cable company, okay, and you are threatening, a big bad Disney, Disney will put out ads, which they, I'm sure, probably are, saying, "Look, it's not us. We want you to watch this. It's the carriage situation." So what does Disney do? Disney basically puts out ads saying you should cancel your charter. I mean, this is a battle of two giants based on one thing. Okay, Charter, the cable company, doesn't want to pay whatever the fees are that ESPN and Disney and whatever channels that of Disney's that they carry. So it's basically a PR war. Just Charter may want to be the group that breaks ESPN down to a maybe a $3 service as opposed to a $7 or $8 service. And ESPN and Disney's not going to play that game. But here's the thing that really bothers me. They always wait until it's a big event. Okay. Go back in time. Doesn't matter if it's Comcast, doesn't matter if it's Charter, doesn't matter if it's Spectrum, any of these other Spectrum and Charter, but Cox, they all take a weekend or a big game coming up and they hold it hostage. And so they say, well, you don't want to, people don't want to miss that. I know a lot of people who this weekend down in Florida, the Tampa Bay area, and also Orlando. Can you imagine 3 or 4 of the largest Charter / Spectrum systems are in the state of Florida, and you had Florida taking on Utah on Thursday night, and then you had the FSU game on Sunday night, and both those games were on ESPN. And so, people in that area couldn't watch the games. So what basically I think is the Charter's going to do is Charter's going to get to a point where if I'm a fan of sports and I'm saying, wait, I'm paying this amount of money for Charter, I'm just going to go to YouTube TV. I'm just going to drop them. And basically, this is what I personally did about 5 years ago. I worked with, I had Comcast, and they were forever getting in these types of fights with, it could be Fox, it could be ESPN, it could be anybody. And so, we were missing games, and I thought, this is nuts. So there was a lot less in the way of streaming options back then, but I just decided, cut the cord. I'm going to stream. I am not going to be held hostage to what the cable company wants me to watch. And I've been able to, put together a group of different, apps and programming sources, which I still pay less than the cable bill that I was paying back then. I get more. So, it is a trade-off, because for some people, it's kind of a little daunting to lose cable and have to, figure out how streaming works. But once you get the hang of it, it's not tough. And what they've done with Sling and what they've done with YouTube TV and others is they've made the channel guide look just exactly like a cable guide. And you can do DVR on it, and you can do everything you can do on Charter, you can do on one of these services. And even though, it's a streaming service, if there's a game on ESPN or 2 or 3 games on ESPN, the channels, as well as Fox and that routine, I can literally, you can change channels and, flip back and forth like you would just like a regular remote. So it's not that daunting. I think that this dispute between Disney, ESPN, and Charter is, as the old saying goes, it's about money, right? And Charter doesn't want to pay the money, and Disney wants the money. And so at the end of the day, we're the ones that get, that lose in that situation. But if you're asking what should Disney do, Disney should make it public, saying, look, it's, you pay a cable bill, and we are here on that cable list. And by the way, is TBS next? Is Turner next? All these different situations. Excuse me, of where the history is going to fall down. People are going to side less with cable and more with the streaming services. Mickey in Orlando. So there you go. Sounds like Charter Spectrum profit margin would be much greater without video and concentrating on mobile wires. That point, Mickey, is a very good one. Okay. I can foresee the cable companies getting out of the programming business, because back in the day, right, what was cable done? Cable was, excuse me, cable was taking a wire from a pole or underground and putting it to your house so you could watch television. Okay. Incredibly expensive infrastructure costs for cable companies to put. They'd win. Let's say they won the Orlando area. Charter won the Orlando area, so they would have to penetrate the Orlando area by investing hundreds of millions of dollars in building a cable infrastructure. But see, we don't we don't need that anymore. Where Charter and Comcast and the cable companies are going to make money is they're going to make it off their broadband, because they all have very good broadband. So you'll keep the broadband theoretically, and you'll subscribe to a YouTube TV, a Sling TV, a Hulu Live, that sort of thing, if you are into and want live sports. And then you'll have a couple of the others. Maybe you'll get a Paramount Plus, maybe you'll get Peacock, maybe you'll get, you'll set whatever your budget is and you'll adapt. The interesting and fun part to this, guys, is let's say you like, a certain show, like example being Only Murders in the Building, which is on Hulu. But you don't watch anything else on Hulu. Well, for the run, which let's say it's 2 months or 3 months, maybe what you do is you sign up for Hulu, and then after you watch Murders in the Building, you drop it. Okay. And so there's different ways to do this. And you can just by juggling what you watch and what you want to see, you'll keep your core group, then you'll bring in stuff. So it gives you, the consumer, the opportunity to watch what you want to watch. And of course, prime time right now is anytime you want it to be. It doesn't have to be, 8 o'clock. That's for your shows and for the movies. The only appointment television right now is news and sports. So I think that in and to itself is going to be where things are going to go. That cable companies won't cease to exist. They'll simply be, in some ways, they'll make more money off the broadband because they're not going to have to send, that. Now, don't be surprised, because I've seen it happen so far, and that is Comcast is already offering a streaming package. So, in other words, if you don't want the cable, fine, that's okay with Comcast. They'll sell you a streaming package, and the streaming package will be about the same as YouTube TV or some of the others, about $70, $80 a month. And then you add your broadband to that, and you add your phone to it if that's what you've got. So that's where they are. And so that's why I say they won't go out of business. They'll just change their business model. There'll be some people who will never want to stream, but there will be those who will. But they also like the idea of keeping everything, under the Xfinity umbrella for Comcast. So that's probably where things are going. It's going to take a few more years to get there, but it's 100% is they're not going to pay Comcast, Charter, Spectrum. They're not going to pay carriage fees in the $6 or $7 or even $8 range for ESPN when they're in direct competition with ESPN Plus and Disney Plus and all the other situations. So basically they're going to say, look, if you want that, go get it yourself. We're not going to pay, we'll pay reasonable. So maybe reasonable is $3 to $5. So the model going forward will be give you the opportunity to either, watch cable in its traditional form, or watch, or stream and take your chances there. As I said, I've been streaming now my 5th year and haven't had any problems at all with it, because you now have the ability to, as I said, pick things up, drop things, and move things around. So you get to do some stuff that you didn't have a chance to do before. Okay, with the Big 10 grant rights expiring in 2030 and the Big 12 grant rights expiring in 2030, do you see the ACC will make a run at poaching the best brands from? Well, yeah, I could see the ACC and the Big 12 going. Remember, they're 2036 unless somebody comes up with a better, way to get out of the grant of rights. But I would think that from a television standpoint, ESPN and Fox, ESPN doesn't have anything in the Big Ten, and they're probably not going to get it. Fox will box them out of the Big Ten. Plus, you've got CBS, and they'll probably put together a streaming package, which will go to Apple or Amazon. So I don't think the Big Ten's headed back to ESPN at all. However, I think what they're going to take that time to do is who is the most successful of the two conferences? Is the Big 12 going to be most successful, or is the ACC going to be the most successful? And if it looks like the ACC is going to do that and they can make up money, ESPN has that pro rata clause in it, perhaps they poach the Big 12. I don't see the ACC poaching the Big 10. The money's too good, and that just doesn't seem like their way of doing things. So I would see a turf war, if you will, between the Big 12 and the ACC, because that would give them the opportunity to kind of link back to the Pac-12 by, co-opting some of those teams. So if there's going to be a turf war, Terrence, I believe that turf war between the networks and the conferences, it's going to be between the Big 12 and it's going to be between the ACC. The Big 12 will no doubt be very aggressive trying to get the ACC. Trying to add on, if the ACC can break the grant. If not, I see the ACC looking to poach from the Big 12 to make their contract better after 30-36. But we shall see. I mean, there's a lot of lawyers, a lot of time, and a lot of stuff going on here on that ACC grant of rights. So we will see. But no, the networks definitely are happy to have what they have right now. Are they going to go out and get more? We'll have to see. But the streaming services are going to play a bigger part in this going into 2030, certainly. And so we'll see. By that time, we may have, Apple may have, merged or purchased part of Fox's sports package. We're going to see a lot of consolidation. So the landscape at that point is going to be very, very interesting. So stay tuned, as the saying goes, Terrence. Well, it's going to be, and keep asking good questions because it's going to be that way. Mickey in Orlando. Okay. Makes sense. It's like getting rid of those hefty carriage fees, although it would be huge for Spectrum, then the focus on the broadband. Yeah. Programming, well, the initial cost in cable is obviously the infrastructure. You have to build that out. So that's, as I said, that's hundreds of millions of dollars over 10, 20 years, right? They don't need that now. You're getting your broadband by 5G anyway. So the broadband is where they're going to make money. I mean, let's say Comcast had, we'll just say for sake of argument, making it. So let's say Comcast had 30 million subscribers, and they lost 5 or 6 or 8 million of them to streaming. They didn't lose that to broadband. Okay, the broadband stayed. What they got rid of was the cable package. So if I'm offering you, like I said, with Xfinity, I'm sure Spectrum will do the same thing. They'll offer you the option to decide, what you want, a la carte, if you will, on streaming. And the rationale behind it too, guys, and everybody knows this, is that, yeah, great. I can have, cable, whether it's Xfinity or whatever, but I need to make it portable. And some have good apps that you can download, and some don't. So I think the cable industry is going to look at streaming. They're probably going to get involved with some of the streaming companies, and we'll see how that works out. But I do believe that certainly Charter and Spectrum and Cox and Comcast, they're not going out of business. They're just changing their business model. And to be the home of your best broadband, because that's where it is, right? If you have funky Wi-Fi, that's not going to work. So yeah, I think that's where we're going. And look, they're survivors. They know how to survive and they know how to work it out. Hey, Jerry, how are you? There's a lot of upsets in college football this holiday. Being an underdog fan, what games would you pay attention to this Saturday? Well, let's pull them up here, Jerry. I don't have the college football schedule in front of me, but let's look. Miami, by the way, I think that might be the Miami Texas A&M game could be really cool. And Miami, of course, would be the underdog in that game. So I'm going to go with that. I'm just going to go see college. The Nebraska game against Coach Prime, that's going to be interesting because it's got a really cool situation with regard to it being played in Boulder, Colorado. So Coach Prime's first home game is in Nebraska. He could be very quickly 2-0 before that day's over. Let's see. Here's what we got so far. Delaware, Penn State. That's not going to be an upset. Notre Dame and NC State. Notre Dame's ranked 13, and North Carolina State's, not ranked. I don't see that being an upset. Notre Dame should win, even though they're on the road. Let's see what else we got. Just perusing quickly. Okay, here's a battle right off the bat. Iowa State. That might be where your underdog is, because that's a rivalry game played very early in the season. So look out for that. Tulane, Mississippi. That could be that's being played in New Orleans. So keep an eye out for that one. So Ole Miss at Tulane. That's going to be an interesting one. I don't see Tulsa, Washington. That doesn't do me any good. As I said before, Texas A&M at Miami. That's a Saturday 3:30 game. App State at UNC. Maybe. SMU, Oklahoma. Nope. Oregon, Texas Tech. That's a big game for Texas Tech, but Oregon's, kind of tested. There's Texas and Alabama. I don't think there's much there. Wisconsin, Washington State. Nope. TCU, Nick State. Southern Miss, Florida State. SC and Stanford. Nah. Yeah. So let's review here. App State, North Carolina, maybe. That's something to look forward to. Miami, Texas A&M, that's a good upset type game. Iowa State, Iowa, good upset game. And Tulane, Mississippi. I think those would be the ones that I would be looking at if I were projecting what might be interesting this coming week. So, let's see. Utah's very excited about their win. So let's see. Well, Jerry, thanks. I'd like to hear yours. Share. Everybody in the class here, share with what you think this week's upset specials are. The SEC and the Big are going to focus on what's best for them. Now, the logic has never come into play in this, but maybe the ACC and the Big 12 cheat guide. You know what? That's not a bad idea, KJ. The situation with those two is there's enough of the schools in there that have the same sort of concept. And I think that it would be a good thing if, and Fox and ABC, well, Fox is the Big 12 and ESPN, and ABC has the ACC. I could see where that would make a lot of sense. I don't know if it's an outright merger, or maybe it's kind of a playing arrangement where, they'll play different teams against each other. But yeah, I think you're onto something there, KJ. I think you are. I think that from a television standpoint, you want to get name brands, and you want to see them play in the best possible situation. So I think that that would be some sort of, I almost use the term alliance, which is bad news, but some sort of partnership in that regard, I think would be very wise on both of their parts. So good point. Absolutely. So keep an eye. We got a couple, we got a little while before that comes, but and the other thing too is the Big 12 and the ACC both are very strong basketball conferences. So, it wouldn't hurt that there too. So yeah, I would think that there would be some mutual benefits by the ACC and the Big 12 working together. I do. And I think that both commissioners, Jim Phillips, who's the commissioner of the ACC, and Brett Yormark at Big 12, they're not, they're realistic about what can be done. And by the way, KJ, that the Pac-12 and Big 12 had approached the Pac-12 about merging, and they didn't. Perhaps a big mistake. And so maybe this type of arrangement, whatever the arrangement can be made, might be the best for both conferences. And so I think you're onto something we're going to have to watch for a while and see how it works out. But good point. Okay, Terrence, what you got, Jim? What do we make the Big Ten ACC voting schools into their individual conferences that are not added up to the rewrite them? Did that seem well? Once the rights deals come up, they can be negotiated. So let's say Washington and Oregon are not going to get a full share of the Big Ten money, the length of the contract, okay? And then you've got Stanford, Cal, and SMU who aren't going to be getting the money, for the length of the contract. There's two things here. On the Big Ten side, it was thought by the two schools that took the money, basically Washington and Oregon, that they would rather be in that conference at less money than not be in the conference. So they're in the conference. They're in the Big Ten. And they've been assured, by the way, Washington and Oregon have been assured that, in the next Big Ten conference, in the next, whatever the deal is, they'll get full shares. So they're basically treading water until that time comes. So they're taking I think they're getting like $30 million a piece with a bump of $1 million each year till the contract comes up. So it's still a partial at that point. It's really basically a half a share that they're splitting. So there's that. With regard to the ACC, that was a desperation move. That was Cal and Stanford wanting to assure themselves of being in they could have stayed and built something around, the Pac-4. They didn't want to do that. They didn't think that was wise. So Stanford and Cal, basically became freelance, free agents, and decided they wanted to go to the ACC. Now, I wrote something back in March, which clearly no one at the Big Ten, Pac-12 office paid attention to, about a merger back then. They'd been working, the ACC and Pac had been working on the conversation of a merger or some sort of document that would put them together for a very long time and save them from the possibility of some poaching. That never came to fruition. And as a matter of fact, the last week of before the PAC took a vote, they went ahead and the ACC was still on the table. And the ACC might very well have ended up with, not just Stanford and Cal, but they could have ended up with the four corner schools if they had figured out a way to make it work. And they couldn't get they needed more time, and time was not something that the Pac-12 had. So the Big 12 benefited by it. So yeah, I mean, Stanford, Cal, and SMU will get full money, but they're not going to get full money until 2037 when the new contract is. And we were talking about just a couple of minutes ago. What an amazing situation that is, right? There's we don't know what's going to be out there in 2036. We don't know who it is. I'm certain that there'll be streamers involved in it. So there'll be Apple, there'll be YouTube, there'll be ESPN Plus, Amazon. So they're all going to be there, and they'll just divvy up the pie as best they can. I don't think we're going to see the kind of money doled out in this next session. I think it's going to be, more of a course adjustment, if you will. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, I do think that the voting schools into their individual conference, they're not additive for TV neutral rights. I think that that's part of another negotiation down the line when this one runs out. And I think at that point, right, Terrence, if you think about it, you'll know a lot more about what is going on, and you'll know a lot more about what the future of college football in general and the future of these conferences are. Because, it may be by that time that the decision's made to say, you know what, let's just divorce the football from the athletic department. And let's form what in essence would be, the super conference concept. So it would be like the NFL. You'd have, an east, west, north, south, kind of 4 pods or 5 pods, whatever, type of setup. So that may be on the block coming up here. But from a network standpoint, I think they will, they're going to evaluate, okay, how does Cal and Stanford do in the ACC? How did SC and UCLA and Washington and Oregon, what did they add to the Big Ten? How did that help us? So, and there's going to be, as I said, there'll be a course adjustment. We'll have to see what that is, but it's gonna take that time. So the networks and the conferences are going to find out if these people that they added actually did add something. We don't know yet. I mean, it's a known unknown at this point, but we'll see. Good question. Doing well. Okay, it will be organizing. I think I hope you're doing well too, Jerry. Oregon versus Texas. Oregon's a very talented team. I mean, they are extremely talented. Bo Nix, he's just having a good old time out there, and they are a potential playoff team. I can see where Oregon find their way to the playoffs. So yeah, I think they're going down to Lubbock to play Texas Tech. Texas, I don't have a read on Texas Tech. I really don't. I don't know what they're doing there. But it's always tough. It's not tough for Oregon to go on the road. They play well on the road. I'm wondering what the weather. I mean, it's been triple-digit heat in Lubbock. Does that cause problems with Oregon? I don't think so. I think they'll be fine. But yeah, the Ducks are for real, and that's a conference out there. The Pac-12 conference is just loaded. So I mean, later today, the um, the rankings will come in, and I would be surprised to see 5 or 6 Pac-12 teams in it, and Oregon obviously being one of them. So everybody had a good weekend in the Pac. So yeah, Oregon, that's a good one. Go Ducks. Okay, KJ, what you got? I think it's not will, but it's will streaming take hold. Do any of the powerful conferences have the flexibility in their network contracts to allow them to work with Apple, YouTube? None of the existing ones do. But remember, KJ, on this end, excuse me, Fox doesn't have a streaming service. So in theory, Fox could sell with permission from the Big Ten conference, or frankly from the Big 12 conference. They have the permission to offer the opportunity to sell sub-licensing of games, which they could sub-license to any one of those 3 groups you mentioned, Apple, YouTube, or Amazon. I don't know that they're there yet on that. Obviously, ESPN Plus is going to gobble up whatever they can get from their contracts. Peacock has an exclusive. I don't know how exclusive is at the Big Ten, but they have an exclusive. But then again, Paramount Plus plays the CBS game, so how exclusive could that be? So if it's going to happen, it could be any one of those 3, and it would have to be a sub-licensing deal, much like the Fox sub-license deal with the MLS and with Apple is done. So in other words, all of the games that Fox produce for the Big Ten or for the Pac-12, the Big 12, would be simulcast on streaming on one of those platforms. So could it happen? It's not written in anybody's contract now, but could I see them, trying to work out a deal, with Fox to get some games or something like that? Yeah, but if you think about it, I think it might be prudent for those 3 platforms to sit this session out and then be full ready in 2030 to start talking about, being a major player in those packages. And that's where the consolidation we talked about is probably going to have to come in, because that way they can do it in clean. Apple, YouTube, and Amazon really don't want to produce anything. Okay, they'll pay you. They'll pay the production costs and all that, but they want to be in the distribution business, and so that's why I'm saying it's more likely that they will pair up with CBS has Paramount, with a Fox, or go it alone, or maybe even we've heard the CW wants to play in different areas, and certainly Ion wants to play in different areas. So we maybe we can see some different players that we're not used to, and the whole consolidation aspect of it. So we'll see. I mean, we're going to see on Max this in October. That's the same place you can watch HBO and Chip and Joanna and the whole gang, Guy Fieri, all of that. They're going to, on Max, they're going to do the Major League Baseball, playoffs and the road up to the World Series. So that's all going to be a Max, and then the NBA and NHL will be on Max. So as I said, consolidation is very important, and I think that while you point out something is absolutely, a valid point, that it's going to take a little while to get to there, but not forever. Certainly by 2030, I think they'll have their together in that regard. And it would have been nice to see how the Apple thing with the Pac-12 would have turned out. Might have been very interesting. The CW official network of the Pac-12 2024. Well, if they want to do, if they choose to do Oregon and Oregon State, they may be the official. I mean, a Pac-12 with now 2 representatives, they have to get 4. They would have to get 4 schools just to no, they have to be at 8. So they have to get 6 schools to be even considered a conference. So that's a heavy load from that standpoint. No, Oregon and Oregon State's going to end up in the Mountain West. They may change the name of it. They may do a reverse merger thing, but it's not going to get them. It's not going to keep the Power 5 designation. They'll lose the Power 5 designation in 2025 because they just won't get the votes to stay. So I would think that it makes more sense. Now, there's some money, supposedly, not a big war chest in the Pac-12 that needs to be doled out. That's money that has been owed to them over a period of time. So, but with a Comcast debt of $50 million hanging over their head, there is a lawsuit from the Holiday Bowl, but that's against UCLA. It's really not against the conference. So, maybe the wisest choice for them would be just to take the money and run and go to the Mountain West. And then, of course, 2 years' time, the Mountain West contract is up. So we might be able to see a really cool renegotiation of the contract that would, bump them either up to the American or perhaps past the American. So it may not be. But the problem obviously with Oregon and Oregon State is they're so used to getting a larger chunk of cash that the unfortunate thing's going to happen is that they're going to probably cut both staff as well as some sports, which is a shame. But such is the way of the times. I don't know if you guys saw the Dr. Pepper commercial, but there was a clever Dr. Pepper commercial last night on the game where they conference. They did a conference realignment where the young woman and this young guy are basically standing outside the bus, and they've been rivals for years, and it's like, I'm sorry I can't hate you anymore because we love playing you and I love hating you, and it was like a very tender looking situation, but they were smack talking in a tender way. It's hilarious. So I'm sure Dr. Pepper will air those spots, coming up. So keep an eye out for it. Anybody have highlights of the weekend? What was their highlight? What were your highlights? What did you like? What surprised you? What didn't surprise you? What did you enjoy over the weekend? I know that I was surprised by Deion, and I shouldn't be, because Deion pretty much usually delivers on what he wants. And, they came through. TCU's defense got shredded. It's hard to replace, what TCU lost. But then again, nobody had any expectations. Think about Deion brought 84 players that had not put on a Colorado uniform prior to spring practice. And so for him to have a game like he did, one game does not a season make. We're going to see what's going on. LSU had to be a disappointment. Chip Kelly had talked them up all, for weeks, and they went out and they got drubbed by FSU. So, there were so many. You had Cal go on the road to a very good North Texas team, and hang over 50 points on them. So yeah, I mean, it was weekend where we saw a lot of college football, but there were some interesting points to take away from it. So, the takeaways are sometimes very entertaining. All right, gang, got time for one or two more questions before we close class today. So let's see what you got. Let me go back to our machine, but you guys, whatever you want to ask, drop them in there. Okay, let's see what we got. Got my firing up my machine. Okay. Eric says that all I see is the Big 12 won the weekend. If you mean Deion Sanders, that's the pack. And I don't know whether you won the weekend there, but I think you're doing okay. Let's see. Okay, Josh. Tuned for time today. Thank you, Josh. A first-time viewer. We're always happy to have him. Hey, kudos to Jeffrey Miller, Jeff Fuller, I'm sorry, of ESPN 960. Jeff and the gang up there are really cool. They cover BYU, really do a good job. As he did a story, which by the way you can get on ESPN 960. I'm sorry, ESPN 960 Sports. Check it out. Jeff Fuller's a good follow on Twitter, and he knows his stuff. And definitely good to see him. Dan Hogan says he still thinks that CBS is going to want the primetime window. Seriously missed opportunity. They could have had Texas Tech game, maybe a part of a Mountain West package, but it's not typical of college football at all for them to be out of the primetime game. Well, Dan, it was their choice, so they could get back into it, but you're basically going up against then ABC, ESPN, Peacock, and NBC. So I'm not so sure that from a programming standpoint that's where you want to be. So we'll see. And there you go. All right, guys. We got through every question. If you have a question, what I want you, we didn't get through all of them. Okay. All right, here's a new one. The cable bundles is collapsing. Disney, ESPN are reacting with urgency for preparing a move to direct-to-consumer streaming. Why isn't Fox reacting with the same urgency? Fox are worried FS1 will fall into the red. I think, without going into great detail on the cable bundle situation, which we kind of talked about earlier, the direct-to-consumer aspect of it, I think Fox is more concerned about waiting for a partner. I don't think they want to venture out on their own. I don't think they want to spend the money to do that. So I think what they're going to do is, as I said before, they're right now with MLS on Apple TV. I think what they're going to want to do is over the next few years, find a partner. We talked a little bit about before, maybe it's YouTube, maybe it's Amazon, maybe it's Apple, but they find a partner. And I think that's what they're looking for, because that way they can invest more money in some of the content that they already have to tie it up, and expend more money on some of the content they'd like to have it that they don't have it right now. So I think that's where they're going to go. Terrence, I think you're going to find a strategic partner. I think ESPN is going to find a strategic partner. I don't think that Apple or Amazon or YouTube are going to buy these entities. I think they are, however, going to become partners with them. And it's not uncommon. It's kind of like what Turner did with CBS on March Madness. I mean, they partnered on that deal, and you got to see the same talent. They worked and played well together. So I think that's the kind of consolidation we're looking for, not just in college sports, probably in the pro sports as well. So for sure, that's probably where we're going to go. And it won't. 5 years goes by in a flash, and so I think that's where we're going to be in 5 years. Because 2025 is when that's kind of like the target date for Disney to launch separately everything over on to ESPN Plus, which doesn't mean you won't be able to get it on cable. It just means that you'll be able to get it without worrying about a cable company knocking you off through their service. The thing, though, is that service may cost anywhere between $20 and $35. We'll get to that price point a little bit further down on the line when it's getting closer to that time. But look, gang, it's been fun as always. Hope to see you tomorrow. We'll be back here at 10 o'clock. And if you missed the show, which is possible, or you forgot to ask a question, or if you see something that you're reading and want to send a clip over and say, hey Jim, what do you think about this? Let's talk about it. For sure, let's do it. Let's talk about it. So if you've got something in the way of comments, without a doubt, put it in there. I will answer it. And like I said, if you see an article or something, do not hesitate. I'm more than happy to take the time. Okay, you took the time to join me today. I'll take the time to help you out as we all navigate through this process. Guys, have a wonderful day. I hope you're somewhere where it's not hot. It's going to be in triple digits here today. So be careful. Drink water. Hydrate. Stay out of, if you can, stay out of the sun, and have a good day. We will see you tomorrow, which surprisingly is a Wednesday. How about that? Okay, gang. Take care.